their lunches, the type of food that they had when they, were having breakfast, like all the cereals that we normally have, and I don't have a lot of cereals, but they're full of sugar. So they have these highs and lows where they're up for a while and they get into the classroom and then they peter off a little bit and then they go back to where they were when they have a piece of fruit or something like that. So, Kerry, talk about what inspired you to write this book about the superpowered lunchbox. What sort of things did you see?
Well, I saw a lot of processed foods showing up in lunch boxes, and I haven't mentioned it up until now, but I'm training at the moment with a company called The Root Cause, and they've done a lot of research over the best part of a decade around Australia, looking at children's lunch boxes, and they find 2 to 4 packets in the average lunchbox every single day. And the thing is that they are, as you've mentioned, often high in sugar and many of them have a lot of preservatives and additives that do affect children's behaviour, or are highly suspected to affect behaviour. And so, I think they did a breakdown on an average lunchbox, and it was something like 74 different ingredients.
74 different ingredients. And you said they had 3 to 4 packet things in their lunch. So that would mean a muesli bar, maybe some type of biscuits.
A popper. A popper is, a fruit popper drink, or a yogurt pouch. There's a whole range of these foods made and marketed as school lunchbox foods, and they are convenient and they are quick, and they're not the devil. You know what I mean? Like, they're not, we don't want to demonize any of those things, but just to put them in their place. They're always going to be part of our culture. It's third generation now of people accepting processed food as normal food. So we can't just suddenly make it go away. However, it is designated the title discretionary food by the Australian nutrition guidelines. And so discretionary foods are foods we don't need. Our bodies don't know how to use them properly, and we're supposed to have only small amounts occasionally. And with our children having 2 to 4 packets in their lunch boxes each day, and then they're having processed cereals for breakfast, which again can have easily 2 teaspoons of sugar in a very small serving, and often people put sugar on top. I've heard of people putting chocolate milk on top of that as well, which is more sugar. So it's really, it ends up, I think, that on average it's 6 to 8 serves of discretionary foods a day. Most, or many Australian children are having.
Because parents are really busy. They pack the lunches. They think, oh, yes, I'll get a box of these and a box of that and some of these and some of that, and that will do for the lunches for the week.
Yeah.
And they put them in the lunches, but they don't actually look at the nutritional value of them. That's because right. They're so busy. So when this research is being done, what sparked the research in the first instant?
With the root cause, Bell and Israel Smith noticed a big change in behaviour in their family when they straightened up what they were eating a bit. They moved away from sugar and processed foods. The reason that they did that was because Israel had some mental health problems, I suppose, after their second child arrived, and Belle shares that story, so I hope she won't mind me sharing that here briefly. But when they changed what they were eating, it affected his behaviour in a really, or the way he felt in a really positive way, but it also affected their daughter's behaviour, and she became much calmer, much less emotional, and so off they went to that they started packing the kids' lunch boxes with whole foods, and they were getting picked on at school for having healthy foods in their lunch boxes. So Belle went into the school to talk to the kids and explain why, that it was to help them feel better and to nourish their bodies properly. And from that, she was asked to come back and teach the other classes the same thing at the school, because it was so important. And from that has grown this massive movement where she now petitions government to make changes in legislation to try and fight the rise in obesity in young people and all sorts of things. So she's become a real mover and shaker in that whole area. And I didn't know about her until I'd almost finished writing my book, and I came across her and her work, and was so impressed that I decided to get on board as well and take the programs into schools. I think it can make a real difference.
Fantastic. And, we as communities, it's so easy to go to a store, a supermarket or something like that. And as you're moving through the checkout, what do you see there? All the sweets and all the chocolates and all the temptations that we try to avoid. And we don't need those temptations in our life because we're tempted enough with them as it is. But let's talk about a sandwich and the value of a sandwich, which is white bread, and they might have peanut butter, they might have Vegemite, they might have jam, they might have, take a banana and put the banana in between the bread. What's the value of white bread, and what's the content of sugar in a slice of white bread?
I guess that one of the biggest issues with white bread is that a large amount of the fibre has been removed in the processing of the grains. So that means that the sugar's released quickly into the bloodstream, which is what causes those spikes and the roller coaster effect we were talking about earlier. So that kind of transfers to 1 to 2 teaspoons per slice of bread of sugar when the child eats that, and so if there's a sweet filling.
1 to 2 teaspoons of sugar in a slice of white bread.
So I know some of them also have added sugar, but what happens is when we eat carbohydrates or processed carbohydrates, we have an enzyme in our saliva called amylase, and it actually converts the carbohydrate to sugars even before we've swallowed it. So it doesn't take long to release that then into the bloodstream.
And then if they have jam or something like that on it, that adds to it as well. And you've usually got, not just one slice of bread, you'll have 2 slices of bread with something between it, which probably, has the sugar content with the preservatives in it as well. I mean, I think schools are getting better at helping parents realise that they need to feed their children healthy foods in their lunchbox. They don't take plastic bags to school or anything like that anymore. They've got these lunchbox with containers that you put things in. And eating healthily, it's not a hard thing to do, really, is it? It's cheaper to go and buy fresh fruit and vegetables than it is to buy packet food.
Yeah, I think we've been tricked a bit, really. There's a lot of marketing around stuff that goes into lunch boxes apart from the processed food. There's this idea that everything has to be fun and it has to be different and there have to be 20 different things in there or the child won't eat. And, it's a bit like that. It seems to me that people kind of make a rod for their own back by the way they treat children and food from the get-go. And I know that there are children that have sensory disorders, and, you know, there are reasons sometimes why children can't and won't eat certain things. But if we present children with a range of different foods, tastes and textures from when they're very small, they will often develop a taste for a range of foods. And I think because of marketing of baby foods and so on, and yogurt pouches and things that are full of sugar, the children get used to that high sugar content in their food, and they'll reject other things because that's what they want. And, you know, it can be really difficult. So I know when my kids were small, they used to have, even though we were in southern Tasmania, I'd still buy an avocado, choose a nice ripe avocado and mash that up. And so they had real food, you know, and they had mashed pumpkin and all of that. But it wasn't processed baby food. It was real food, just mashed up so that they had to deal with a little bit of texture in their food and so on. And they pretty much ate whatever we were eating, and we'd just mash it up or cut it very fine and give them little tastes of what we were eating, which was real food.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, when you say that? And I'm thinking about when my children were little, I never ever bought processed foods. It was always cooked vegetables, mashed up so that they could, you know, have them. You know, I remember, gosh, parents putting Vegemite in their potatoes and things like that to add flavour to them so kids would eat them.
Mm.
It's like now, I mean, those little processed packs of yogurt that these little kids take the top off and suck. How much sugar's in those? Because I know there's a lot of sugar in them.
I don't know. I'd have to go and get a packet and have a look. I can't
Oh.
tell you off the top of my head, but I do know that the World Health Organization have sort of recommendations for the amounts of added sugar that our bodies can tolerate fairly comfortably. And for, you know, your average sort of child in year 3 or 4, that's maybe year 5, 6, sort of in that upper range of primary school, is 4 to 5 teaspoons a day. Now, if they have a popper, some of the poppers can have up to 6 teaspoons in one popper. So that's just blown that out of the water.
What's a popper?
A popper's like a little cardboard box of apple juice, orange juice, those kinds of things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I should have had something handy to show you.
No, that's okay.
But yeah, so it's about 200 or 250 millilitres of juice, or, you know, and they have reconstituted fruit juice in them, but they have quite a high sugar content. That they vary, so you need to have a look at the labels and you know, make sensible choices around them. But if you imagine, I don't know, can I mention brands? Nutri-Grain, I think, is 51% sugar.
Yes.
So if they have, you know, a serve of that and a chocolate milk drink for breakfast, and then they have a popper and a packet of little biscuits, or you know, something else sweet in their lunch, and a muffin and something other, you know, they've just blown the reasonable amount of added sugar right out of the park. It's just crazy. And the problem is, if that's happening every single day,
those kids get
it's going to have
to
a real impact on their long-term health, you know, and even in the shorter term, diabetes, type 2 diabetes used to be an adult onset disease after decades and decades of not taking proper care of our bodies, you know, and of having too much sugar. And now it's showing up in children at a younger age. And I think if you want a few quick figures, I haven't got them for diabetes, but for being overweight and obese, 25%, very close to 25% of children between 4 and 17 are now overweight or obese. And I think it goes up to, let me think, 46% of kids from 17 to 25 are overweight or obese.
So when you
So it's
say
becoming a big problem.
overweight and obese is, yes, very, very overweight and all the rest of it. But the just overweight, it could be a few kilos, or it could be 4 or 5 kilos, or
That's
whatever.
it. It just means, you know, there's kind of a
little bit of an imbalance in their weight for their height and their size and all that sort of thing.
There's kind of recommended for different sized frames and so on, you know. So that's just taken from the you know, from big health studies, that's the general trend seems to be, that this is starting to be more of a problem than it used to be.
Yeah.
And it seems to be associated with higher levels of consumption of sugar and, you know, processed foods. I will say that even people who are sort of in their healthy weight range and can look really well and can be exercising a lot and be really fit can still have really unwell organs inside their body if they're eating a lot of processed food. Some people say, oh, you know, I can eat anything and I never put weight on, so I'll just eat whatever. But it still impacts on their health and well-being.
Yeah, and they can, a skinny person can have a high fat content. You know, they can be skinny, but their fat content.
Fatty liver disease. Yeah. So it's quite complex, but it all boils down in the end to our bodies are designed to use nature's food for energy and growth, and the further we get from that natural food, the bigger the impact on our bodies, the bigger negative impact on our bodies and our health and well-being. And it does affect our mental health and well-being as well as our physical.
Yeah, it does. Food does.